Hello, Chris. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we were just talking before we hit record here, and it sounds like you've had a whirlwind of the last few days. So we'll try not to wear you out too much, but we'll just jump right in here.
Very
Um,
good.
and before we do, tell us, the audience, tell our listeners a little bit about Free State Cooperative.
Okay, so FreeState Electric Cooperative is a distribution electric cooperative. So we're basically electric utility in the state of Kansas. We have about 16,000 member consumers that we serve in rural Kansas areas. Um, and our territory surrounds the western edge of Kansas City. We go all the way north of Topeka, um, and all the way south down near, I don't know if you know where Pomona Lake or Overbrook and
Yeah.
Osage County area. So we have quite a vast, we got about 3,200 miles of line that we maintain. Company's about 80 employees, and we purchase wholesale power from two wholesale power suppliers, uh, the local investor-owned utility Evergy, and another generation transmission co-op named Kansas Electric Power Cooperative. So, and how a co-op operates, just a little bit about our business model is we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c12,
Okay.
and with that, any revenue minus expenses, there's any margin left over, actually gets returned to our member consumers, allocated to them in a form of patronage capital or equity that they earn. So
Hmm.
our goal is on at least a 30-year cycle is to return our capital credits, our patronage capital back to the member consumer. So basically, if you pay your electric bill, you're earning equity within our company, then you do get returned a portion of that equity, almost like a dividend.
Oh, okay. And how often is that equity returned or that dividend paid?
Well, we use a LIFO FIFO method. So first in, first out, last in, first out. So our oldest members are seeing a portion of those return, and then our newest members that just joined as a member. And we try to do that annually at some level if the cooperative is financially viable, and we return anywhere 500,000 in a year to $800,000 in a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great. That's great. And how long has Free State been around?
Well, we are a legacy cooperative. So Free State was formed due to a consolidation of two legacy cooperatives back in 2017, but we've been in operation over 85 years,
Okay.
counting. So we've been around a long time.
Okay. And so, because the idea of a cooperative may still be a little bit unfamiliar, although your explanation was kind of spot on and fantastic on what you guys do. Why are cooperatives created?
You know, the cooperatives were created, especially in the electric utility sector space, was back in the 1930s when local towns and cities were building out power through investor-owned utilities. The rural areas didn't have access to that same electricity, and that's what they were looking for. And so at that time, there was local farmers and ranchers getting together and pooling their resources together to say, we want electricity out in the rural areas. And so that electric cooperatives were born. And then back with the New Deal with President Roosevelt, he created back in the 30s the Rural Electrification Act. Sorry, that was a tough one to get out there.
Yeah.
Um, which then created low-cost financing through the USDA so
Okay.
that co-ops could go out and get access to capital because we don't have stock. We can't raise capital that way. We have equity that we can raise through electric rates and then through borrowing through lenders. And so cooperatives were born in that space, and really, there's over, I think in total right now in the state of Kansas, there's 27 in co-ops in the state of Kansas,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and we're serving in at least 105 counties. So there's a few counties that co-ops don't serve in, like Johnson County and Wyandotte County, a couple areas like that closer to Kansas City. But other than that, we're all over the state.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. That's informative for sure. So how long then have you been CEO? It's like 6 years, 7 years?
Actually, less than that. I took over in January 22, so I'm in my third year
Okay, okay,
as Chief Executive Officer. Yep.
okay. How'd you get there? How'd you become CEO?
So, uh, I finished high school here in Kansas. I moved around a lot as a kid, and then ended up going to Kansas State and got into investor-owned utilities early on after graduating from Kansas State, and spent a lot of time. I started at Westar Energy out of Topeka, and then I moved to Kansas City Power and Light, and in Kansas City. Now they're together formed Evergy, but learned a lot. Just was able to try different opportunities, different roles. Um, at times I was stationed out in some power plants, spending some time out there. I spent time in service centers and then at the corporate office, in doing all sorts of roles, finance, compliance work, and landed a role as assistant general manager at the local cooperative, um, and was under a CEO's reign for 10 years, and I had the board gave me an opportunity. So I was able to demonstrate that I had the skills and abilities to lead the organization.
Right. And you I don't want to gloss over your experience up to GM, then CEO, because you spent a lot of time as an auditor based on my research, correct? In some of these different roles in different organizations up through the food chain. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I began working in my career as an internal auditor. I'm a certified internal auditor, but that was, I really looked at that role as an educational role and a stepping stone into something more, because it allowed you to dive into multiple departments and learn about how the company operates and what are their internal controls, what's important to these leaders in these departments or divisions, and how are they successful. And really that's what their hope is. They have that these controls, that they are meeting their objectives, they're meeting their performance objectives. And so that took me into some merger and acquisition space back in 2008 when KCP&L acquired Aquila at the time, another utility, local utility, and that I was part of that project management process about bringing groups together, and forming new processes based on the new organization and the needs of that organization, and building business plans for that. So that really kind of, at the time, helped me learn about how the business case or how things operate at the senior vice president level.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's because that's what I was wondering about is how much that peek kind of behind the curtains as an auditor gave you in the education process, right? Learning not only about your own business, but just how these businesses ran, right? Like I think that's a really interesting perspective that not a lot of people have that you have.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's for someone coming out of school, I was a finance degree
Okay.
in background, and if you're wanting to learn about how the company operates, it was a great place to start.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So now that you're in CEO role, you've been there for a few years. Um, what do you know now that you wish someone would have told you about being CEO?
I've been asked this question before, and I it sounds interesting, but I would have to say that sometimes it's the best job in the world, and sometimes it's the worst job in the world. There's
Okay.
really no in between. You get to experience and make change and add value and impact people's lives and drive culture and make it a great place to work. And then other times you're making some very challenging decisions that's going to impact people's lives, impact the company, and you have a lot of responsibility to ensure the success of the organization. And I report to a board of 9 great directors that are very supportive. But there's a lot of business challenges coming up. And in I'd say the last 10 years of this industry, we've seen more change in the electric sector than I've seen in all of 20 years that I've been in the
Hmm.
industry.
Wow.
So, you know,
What?
new technologies, electric vehicles, distributed renewables such as, solar and wind, how you procure power and managing peak demand when the cost is highest on the grid, uh, all those things, and then just inflationary pressures, higher interest rates that we're leaning into, skill gaps and trying to find skilled folks for certain positions. Just the business needs are shifting dramatically. We're getting into an age of artificial intelligence and how to utilize that. How do we maximize that to the benefit of the cooperative? Because, we're small, we're 80 employees. You can have only so much specialization, and our resources are scarce. So our goal is to keep rates as affordable as possible for our members. So that really, when you're trying to balance all those spectrums, it's been a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine there are a lot of challenges that you guys are facing. You mentioned one I want to just touch on a little bit, which is the electric vehicles and the demand, right, that's being created for power for these electric vehicles that I don't know where it is on the spectrum other than it's growing and it continues to grow. But how are you guys thinking about future needs based on electric vehicles in general?
The main thing that we're trying to do right now with the penetration of electric vehicles is knowing, at least here in Kansas, especially, that there's limited charging infrastructure out there right now.
Hmm.
So we're trying to take a look at how do we prepare for that, but we're also trying to be proactive with our member consumers, trying to have them reach out to us and say, "Hey, I'm buying an electric vehicle," because the worst thing that could happen is if you've got someone you got a group of folks in a development. And so you think about when the electric grid was built, it was right sized to the load that was needed at the time.
Hmm.
And what's happening is if you get a bulk of, say, 4 homes that are served off of one pad mount transformer and they all plug in electric vehicles, that transformer no longer is adequate for that load.
Yeah.
There's there's service upgrades that need to occur. So we're just asking, and we're even giving like bill credits and things like that. If you tell us, hey, register your electric vehicle with us, and we can make sure that you're not causing voltage issues to your neighbor next door.
Right. Yeah.
So there's been a little bit of that. So trying to be on the proactive edge. And then we're in the process of upgrading our metering system. And the goal is that system, the newer technologies can really look at these load profiles and see, okay, this is a typical load profile of a potential electric vehicle. So, we can be on the proactive end of it as in preparing in our capital planning. So we do a 4-year capital work plan. And when those things start funneling down, we know, hey, we've got to upgrade this section of line to
Mm.
meet the growing demand needs. And so really, if I can stress anything to consumers is if we can be proactive as electric utility, then knowing what's coming, we can prepare for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. And I don't know nearly enough about the grid, but it totally makes sense, right? If you have 3 or 4 people that all plug their car in at the same time to a system that's not prepared to handle it, it could seriously create issues. So yeah. I'll be darned. Um, are there other challenges that as an organization you guys are facing right now that aren't maybe necessarily tied to industry specifics? Like, for example, you mentioned people, and you mentioned AI, which everybody's dealing with, right? But what if you had to pick one? What's the biggest obstacle that you guys are facing right now?
Yeah, I think, and I think a lot of organizations, being the size that we are, I think one of the things that can't be overlooked is just the constant demand of cybersecurity, ensuring that you're protecting members' data, consumer data,
Mhm.
um, and that there's just a cost that comes with that protection. And you read all the time, there's all these different companies, large companies, billion-dollar companies that are getting impacted. So like, what can we do on the proactive end to ensure that we're making sure that information's safe, that we have good business continuity planning if something to occur. We do a lot of tabletop exercises and things like that to prepare for a scenario like that. And so
Yeah.
I think that's one of the scariest things, because you could go to work one day and and it'd be great, and the next day, all of a sudden, boom, you've got this major uh, business problem that you're going to have to solve. And our goal is reliability, keeping the lights on, and that's the number one thing that's most important to us. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially as you guys are part of the infrastructure, right, of the country, you have to have a heightened sense of awareness, right? I mean, yeah, it's true. I think everyone's challenged with that at this point. So given your background and your experience, how you evolved into this the role of CEO, one of the questions I always like to ask people is what is your business superpower? What is your unfair advantage, right? So your strength that you really lean into
as a business, what you
as a
know,
leader, as a
as a
person.
as a person, I would say one of my greatest strengths is probably empathy as a leader, and really empathy with our consumers, what they're dealing with. They're all having the same property tax and inflationary pressures at the grocery store. Empathy with employees with hectic lives with young kids and all that. But it's just empathy all around in terms of really connecting with people and understanding their situation. And what I try to coach here at Free State is we want to give you a place where you get paid fairly, good comp, great benefits, but then also just a good work atmosphere and a great place to work. And that's where I feel like you drive engagement and productivity, is you build that sense of loyalty because they have that autonomy to make decisions. They feel like they're adding value. They're putting input in and making changes. And that's where, at the end of the day, then they're going to do their best work, and it's going to be what's the best interest of what Free State needs. So, but yeah, empathy, I'd say is my core value, one of my core values.
That's interesting because early on in the conversation you referenced culture a couple of times, which fits in nicely with what you just said about empathy and creating that internal culture within the company. But where'd you learn that? Did you read it? Did someone tell you that and you've just implemented it? Have you always been that way? Like, where'd that come from?
Uh, you know, I I drive a lot for my
Okay.
job.
Yeah.
So I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts, and some of my favorites are, Simon Sinek, he's a cornerstone. But it's all about human connection, and making sure that, you know, some of the things that leaders can do best, I believe, is not listen and not listen to respond. Like hearing what that person's trying to say or get out. And I've always thought about, if I ever got to the helm, I wanted to create an environment, a team environment where people feel heard, they feel valued, um, that they can make the greatest impact, because then they're going to do their best work, and be passionate about their jobs. And where I learned a lot of this is multiple books, multiple podcasts, hearing about what success looks like. In my eyes, is just that, because I feel like, I don't know, you might feel this way too, Chris, but like, there is no end game to culture. There's no end game to business. To me, like Simon Sinek, he defined it, it's an infinite game.
Right.
You're constantly shifting, and you could be in a great position one day, and the next day you walk into a whole mess, and oh, it completely changes. So how do you just keep slowly moving that needle forward in the right direction? Is there's no silver bullet. There's no like, all right, guys, we achieved. We're satisfied. Culture's good.
Right.
Next.
Yeah. 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 It's good. We fixed it. Okay. Next problem.
Right.
So you mentioned Simon Sinek, right? The Infinite Game, Start with Why. Um, sounds like you've had enough windshield time that you've probably been to the end of the library and back with regards to audiobooks and podcasts. Do you have a favorite, either author or book, or one that you would always recommend? Maybe something different than Simon Sinek?
Yeah. So I think one of the most moving books. So before I started, I went through a process of I wanted to have a one-on-one with every single employee before I took over. And I asked them, hey, you're going to have as much time as you need. I had some canned questions, open-ended questions to get them talking. But the premise was this is I want the unfiltered director's cut version of what's really going on here from your vantage point. And I got some real uh, good advice and recommendations and input that really pointed out where are the painkillers in the organization? What are the things that we need to think about as an organization? What's important to employees? And so it was reinforced with I actually got the book here. It's I don't know if you it's Our Ship.
Oh, okay. Don't know that one.
So the original book is It's Your Ship by Captain D. Michael Ascroft. And this is about a naval commander that took over USS Benfold, and the ship was like one of the worst in the fleet.
Oh, I've heard the story. I didn't know that was the name of the book. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So he's got two versions. The first book, it's Your Ship, and then he came out with a couple of years later. I think he came out. It's Our Ship,
Okay.
which it's the same premise, but that was the one thing that he did when he took over Benfold is he sat down with every single person on the crew and figure out what needed to be fixed. And then, through that process comes innovation. You've got employees telling you, well, if we just did it this way, it would be a lot easier, or all the different things. Or the employees saying, I just don't understand why we do it this way, and like kind of so that was kind of a revolutionary book that really changed me. And then years before that, I was in my MBA and I read a book called First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham.
Yeah. Yep.
Everyone probably heard that. And I felt like when I was doing my MBA, that was kind of a profound story because, or what Marcus was talking about was, quit trying to lean in on people's weaknesses, lean on their strengths. You're going to get more bang for your buck, emphasizing those strengths. And that stuck with me for a very long time. Like, because we all know, like, your weaknesses, you can only get them to a certain point, and then, but your strengths, you can really go off the charts in terms
Yeah.
of you just got a lot more power there, and
Yeah.
in surrounding yourself with folks that complement that, and that, then that's how you get A players around you.
Totally. Totally. I love Marcus Buckingham. Um, have you read Nine Lies About Work?
I have not.
Nine Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham was probably 2 books ago, so it's 3 or 4 years old now.
Okay.
I would, if you like First Break All the Rules and you like him and kind of that philosophy, I would recommend that one. He has a whole chapter on this idea that you just talked about, leaning into strengths, and like you don't have to be a well-rounded person. You just need to play to your strengths and go do that. That was fascinating. And one more I'll give you that's not a business book, but has a lot of application to it. It's called The Boys in the Boat. Have you read The Boys in the Boat? So you told me earlier, some of your athletic activities that your family's involved in. So it's got a little bit of an athletic undercurrent to it, but it's about the crew team in the 40s from the University of Washington that was training to go to the Olympics. And it's this whole idea. Here's the main tenet, right? Is it's not about getting everybody in the same boat rowing the same direction. It's about getting everybody in the same boat rowing the same direction at the same time. And that's how you go fast. That's how you win the Olympics, right? And it talks about this crew coach getting these guys that were basically farmers from the middle of Kansas that had never crewed before to come out and taught them to be Olympic crewers. It's just, I love the story because you've been in business long enough that you'll totally see the application and it's never about business. So you might enjoy that too.
Appreciate that, Chris.
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
So what's the future for the company look like? What are you guys trying to accomplish? What do the next 5 years look like? Big picture.
You know, really at the end of the day for us, it's all about member service and giving our members the best interaction they can. I mean, we all know there's plenty of examples of what bad customer service. You experience it all the time. And we're truly a service company. Yeah, we're selling basically a commodity, but you know, for folks to feel like they, giving them an experiences where we made them feel good afterwards, they're going to remember those interactions. And so every interaction at a time, earning that trust has been kind of our vision. And so right now we're in the next, from now till the next 5 years, we're really in a pinnacle time of technology upgrades. Our members' needs and wants have changed dramatically in the last few years. They want quicker response to restoration or outages. They want their voice to be heard. They just want information. A lot of the times when folks are out of power, they're not so necessarily as mad because they know a storm blew through, but they just want to know, when is it going to be back on, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're after. And so how do we utilize our people and our technology to maximize that? So we're working on that piece. I'm working on developing rates that give members a choice where they know they have to pay their fair share, but like if they want to choose to run their dishwasher later, they're probably going to be incented to do that.
Okay.
So the consumer's needs and wants are shifting. They want to know that they have choices out there. And so we're working on that rates. And then the last piece that I'll be working on is just continually securing reliable wholesale power supply for our members. We all experienced the latest Winter Storm Uri, where there was rolling blackouts that came through the Southwest Power Pool territory. And never in my 20 years of being in this industry, I thought we would be in that scenario. And, I think it was a huge wake-up call to legislature folks, to a lot of people. A lot of people at that time hadn't even heard what the Southwest Power Pool was. But, this is a big interconnected grid. And, I think the recipe for this has been trending a little bit in the wrong direction in terms of we need to be more mindful about how we integrate these resources. Because if you want reliability, we got to be mindful how we integrate resources. They've got to match. And then, if you pull up the USA Today or all this, power demand is not going down, it's rising. And with these huge data centers coming with around AI, the need for electricity is just going to grow. So how do we balance all of those things? I think renewables certainly have a great place. They're a good offset at certain times, and we even have some solar ourselves that we've integrated to lower some wholesale power costs. But it's about integrating those resources in the right manner. It's not an all-in approach, and we need a mix of dispatchable and then renewable resources, something that you can call upon immediately when you need it. And so I just hope that, so in the next 5 years, really just the way energy policies can set at a federal and state level is really going to be the guiding light of where do we go. And I'll just be frank with the new EPA rules of what they just put out around the power plant rules of greenhouse gas emissions, and that is not the step in the right direction for this industry and for the consumer from a cost perspective. So I have very heightened concerns when it comes to what is the price of energy going to do that is completely out of even my control running an electric utility. So
Right. Yeah. 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 A lot of unknowns for you guys in the future, right? I mean, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap up, I have one last question for you, and that is someone in the audience, the listening audience, has the opportunity to become CEO of their company, or maybe they've just become CEO of their company, right? But our audience is a lot of owners, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and they're looking for advice or words of wisdoms. What would you give them? What's the piece of advice, right, that you would give to somebody and as they're starting out in their entrepreneurial or their leadership journey?
Yeah, I think I would tell those folks, this is a marathon, not a sprint, and be patient and really assess your strengths. Where do you think your strengths are in your organization? And then listen to your folks, and don't be scared not to take some risks. You might hear some ideas that you're immediate no, and you should really pause and think about what they're saying and why they're saying it. Because we only know what we know at this level, and you only get shared certain pieces of information.
Right.
Sometimes you'd like more, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to make the business decision, both for the company and for maybe that employee. And so, just be patient, utilize your resources, and be sure to talk with your folks, get to know your people. They've got families, they've got a lot going on, and they're your biggest asset when it comes to the success. Because me being CEO is all great, but I'm only as good as my folks that support me. So
Yeah, that's that infinite game thread that just keeps kind of running through your approach, which I love, right? Patience, empathy. We're never done. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So if somebody out there wanted to learn more about the co-op or connect with you for some reason, how might they go about doing that?
Sure, they can go to www.freestate.coop. That's our website. We're on X. We're on Instagram. We've got Instagram handle. We even have a TikTok page that we've been putting some interesting stuff out there, just trying to get engagement. We still get the most engagement out of our Facebook page, so you can find us there. Just look at FreeState Co-op. So yeah, I'm out on LinkedIn, and always willing to network and connect and meet new leaders and hear about what's working for them.
Great. And are we going to see Chris Parr dancing videos on TikTok, or is that there? We're not there yet.
I don't know about dancing.
Okay.
Well, my employees, they like to get creative, so
Yeah.
I don't even have TikTok. So
Yeah.
but
So
I've seen some snippets. So
yeah. Well, Gary V says all CEOs should be dancing on TikTok. I'm like, okay, if you say so. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, this has been great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and all of your insight and wisdom, and wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Chris. Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
You too.